let's talk about sexy vampires. And yes, I have no idea how to do dark makeup. This was a first for me. Today's movie is brought to you by my father's horrible decisions to let me watch movies that I should have not watched when I was a child. Almost every single movie that I have reviewed in this channel is because my father let me watch a movie that I should have not watched when I was a kid, and Dracula's 2000 is one of those. Dracula's 2000 is a 2000s movie, and it was presented as Wes Craven's Dracula, but he was only the executive producer. But then again, I guess that if he put the money is because he believed in this story. This movie was actually co-written and directed by Patrick Lussier, who was Wes Craven's editor for several of his movies. Some of them pretty successful, the other ones not so much, so we can say that Wes Craven was biased when it came to Patrick. And actually, when the script for this movie was presented to the producers, they were like, I hate this script, but I love the concept, so rewrite it. And the movie was heavily rewritten, and we might never know which one was worse, because this actual movie has 17% in Rotten Tomatoes. Even the audience score is really bad. Personally, I have not read Dracula, but after this movie, I think that I need to, because I need some answers. This movie was supposed to be a reinterpretation of the original novel by Bram Stoker, but in this version, Dracula wakes up in the 21st century. Dracula in this movie was played by Gerard Butler, and actually this was his first big role in Hollywood. And you know, Gerard Butler's roles at the start of his career were pretty bizarre. But then again, Gerard Butler is someone who said that he got into acting because he just wanted to be famous. This movie builds up on the original Dracula, so obviously we are introduced to the old Van Helsing and his grandson Simon. They are briefly interrupted by Selina, Mr. Abraham's secretary. He dismisses her for the night as Simon eyes her. Soon, he approaches her, trying to get her to go out for dinner with him. She rejects him, and it is established that this has been going on for a while, but Selina keeps rejecting him because she is a woman of integrity, and obviously she won't date someone she works with, especially the guy who is basically the grandson of the owner of the museum. Simon leaves the premise, and a very suspicious guy knocks on the door and delivers a very comical line.
I heard you had some sort of security problem.
No, sir.
You do now.
Another man appears and he throws pocket sand at the security guard. The way this movie is edited is so 2000s. Like, it actually reminds me of The Matrix. Like, the cuts and the music and the action style, I can see the influence. They let in another set of people, and one of them is Danny Masterson's Steve from That 70s Show. He was cast as a bad guy, and he looks so silly. This group of people know what they are doing. They brought with them a fake handprint, a voice recording, and a fake eye for the retinal scan. I'm going to pass the handprint, but how do you get a fake eye? So apparently, behind the big security door, there is a big cave. Selina appears, entering the cave very scared. There are skulls with big fangs, and she gets caught by Marcus. And for a moment, you think she's in trouble. But really, she is in on the plan, and Marcus is her boyfriend. She was the one who passed the information about the vault to the group in hopes of stealing something valuable. But Marcus is angry because there's nothing but furniture and crucifixes. Selina insists, you don't put this type of security on nothing. And I think everyone would agree. You just would never think that there's a man in a coffin in there. But old Van Helsing is literally playing with leeches on the upper floor, so who knows what's valuable to that guy? Well, he's injecting leech blood into his system now and going on a trip. We go back with the assault group, and they had found a coffin. The group is angry because they believe they would find gold. Marco's logic is that you don't hide gold in plain sight, as if building a freaking vault wasn't too obvious. So that the gold must be inside the coffin. The coffin is just a facade to fool people to not take the gold. The problem is that the coffin seems to be impossible to open. They begin to look for a crack or something, and then this dumbass tries to force it open, accidentally pushes it off of the base, activating a trap, and he gets impaled.
Jesus Christ!
Then another trap comes out and kills another guy, and more blood splatters everywhere. An alarm goes off in Mr. Van Helsing's office, and he needs to take his glasses off because the alarm means that whatever is in the coffin has woken up. So he opens up his secret stash of weapons and silver bullets. The blood that was splattered on the coffin starts to be absorbed by the coffin. The thieves need a way out, so they need to explode a wall because, well, the entrance is blocked by their impaled friend. By the time Van Helsing reaches the catacomb, the coffin is gone and he fears the worst. Then we get a weird Dracula montage, but it's just a nightmare this girlie was having, and according to the conversation these two are having, she's constantly having nightmares with a man with fangs. If I was her, I would think that maybe I am developing a vampire fetish. We're back with Simon and old Van Helsing. Simon insists they should tell the police, but the old man insists they can't call the police because his personal belongings are quite curious. You know, like a man trapped in a coffin. Kind of curious. So he leaves Simon in charge of the business. I have no idea what kind of business this can be because he needs to leave. The thieves are still trying to open up the coffin, but it's pretty shut tight, so they give up. The coffin then starts letting out some evil mist, and they finally figure out how to open it. I understand why they were having trouble figuring out how to open the coffin, but if that was me, I would feel very stupid. 2 people died trying to open that thing. Inside the coffin, there's a dead body, but he is surprised because of the leeches. I would be surprised about everything. Then this idiot, for a reason, tries to take off the leeches and throws one into his own eye. This guy starts looking around for anything of value when Dracula finally wakes up and he obviously kills Shady. Outside they hear the commotion, but only one guy cares, so you know, they are a bunch of bigger assholes than you thought. This guy starts looking around for Shady until he sees the coffin is opened, and when he looks inside, there's Shady completely dead. And of course, he gets scared and sleeps on some blood on the floor. Dracula then appears right behind him and he's dead too. I like Dracula makeup here. I think it's pretty cool. Dracula makes an incredible entrance and with the help of some magic wind, he's hot again. And what happened next is so funny. Dracula gives Selina a weird sexy look and now she's hypnotized by him. He is the original sexy vampire. He's here to steal your girl and fuck bitches. This dude tries to shoot Dracula, but regular bullets do nothing to him. Then, a big cloud engulfs the plane, because Dracula controls the weather now. And even Dracula is surprised that he can do that. As Dracula is killing the crew left in the plane, these two have a cosmical encounter. Mary is convinced she's having another dream, but clearly she isn't. These two are obviously connected in some type of way. Her friend interferes the cosmical connection. Mary is obviously scared because she thinks she's going insane. For a reason, this inspires Mary to go to her local church and talk to the priest. Apparently, her mother took her away from her father and she lived in fear of something. But her mother died and never told anyone, and the priest also knows nothing, so this was kind of useless. Dracula attacks again, but this time he attacks a pair that is reporting on the plane crash. We get a silly shot of how Dracula cannot be captured by camera, and he kills the camera guy. And then he applies his sexy glare to this woman too. Now he's wet and showing his saps, so it is super effective. We go back to Mr. Van Helsing, who is trying to track down Dracula. Simon appears, confessing he has been following him, and Mr. Van Helsing is like, that was a dumb decision. The corpses of the thieves wake up, now as vampires. Van Helsing manages to kill Shady, but Selina escapes. He then decides it is a good idea to hand the gun to Simon, who is very confused and scared. It turns out that Shady is not dead, and he actually apologizes because he doesn't know what's wrong with him.
I'm sorry, man. I just don't know what's wrong with me.
Simon manages to break free and empties the gun on him. As Shady is dying, I kind of saw Wes Craven influence on the film.
I said I was sorry.
Marcus comes back as a vampire too, and now we went full Freddy Krueger in this bitch. Simon brings up a cross to scare Marcus away, but he clarifies that he is an atheist. But surprise!
God loves you anyway.
Selena finds Simon and she's getting very frisky with him because she's a vampire now, so she's obviously horny 24/7. Well, she is until the old Van Helsing shoots her, but he doesn't kill her. Again, he makes the dumb decision to leave Simon in charge, but he's a romantic, so he doesn't kill her and they have to escape. Despite everything that he just saw, Simon is having a hard time believing vampires are real. And so Van Helsing tells him about how they trapped Dracula the first time. And basically, he got very impaled by everybody. This movie is very sensual, so obviously it will have a lot of phallic symbolisms. Dracula didn't get impaled by a sword. He got impaled by a spear, which is round and penetrates people. So, phallic symbolisms. So basically, Van Helsing has stayed alive to be Dracula's keeper. So what he does is that he uses the leeches to suck Dracula's blood, then he takes the blood from the leeches and injects it in his own veins to be immortal, just like Dracula, which is kind of an icky process, honestly. And the biggest revelation is that Mary, the girl who is connected to Dracula, is also Van Helsing's daughter. And since Van Helsing has been injecting Dracula's blood into his veins, then Dracula's blood also runs in Mary, and that's what connects them. Dracula is now in town, and he is ready to find Mary. And so, to make us understand how fast he goes, we get this strange kind of time-lapse that just makes me feel like I am drunk instead of seeing things through the POV of the sexy vampire Gerard Butler. And of course, that sexy vampire Gerard Butler stumbles into the kinky part of town, and he is enjoying some sexy ladies dancing behind a tinted window. That is until some coins fall on the floor and trigger him. After some jumping here and there, watching the characters do nothing, we get this depraved kind of video, and Dracula thinks it's brilliant. You see, unlike Edward Cullen, he doesn't hide the fact that he is a very horny vampire who likes to sin. Dracula finds the record store where Mary works, and I don't know why the score of the movie sounds like a Matrix movie. It's even funnier because Dracula is dressed like in the Matrix, and you just gotta love how every single woman is instantly attracted to him. Dracula finds Mary's friend Lizzie, and we need to remember he had that cosmic connection with Mary, so he knows who the friend is. He straightforwardly asks for Mary, and Lizzie, being as horny as every woman around this guy, she takes him to their home so he can wait for her there. This version of Dracula is just cocky all the time, in every sense of the word. He has two emotions, that one weird look that seems like he's holding back a fart to hypnotize women, and smug, punchable face. He is too sensual to emote. Dracula has been in the house for 2 minutes and he is already in bed with Lizzie, and then they start to levitate around the room. It's so ridiculous because I don't care how good it is, you will notice you are suddenly in the air. The moment your back hits that cold ass ceiling, you will yelp. Bottom line is that he beat Lizzie to turn her into a vampire. And Mary has a vision of this happening while she is just on the streets doing literally nothing. She's just like holding into a building for dear life. Simon eventually finds Mary and tries to explain to her he is there to help her on behalf of her dad. And like a good protagonist, Mary doesn't want to know anything about her dad because of daddy issues and she goes away. Simon then gets attacked by a homeless man and oh my god, it's Marcus well and alive! And I need to say he is the weirdest comic relief I have seen in a movie. Simon ends up cutting his head off. I don't know why the scene even existed. This movie is 2 hours long, so I'm just guessing that we needed to release some tension before we could move on. And with good reason, because we finally get the Dracula Van Helsing reunion. And I mean, it's kind of unfair, because on one side, there's Dracula, a young and strong, sexy man, and on the other is just a crippling old man. And so, Dracula jits him into the air and against the mirror, because obviously. Mary arrives home and you would think Dracula would be there to greet her. He has been looking for her the whole movie. But no, instead, she comes to her house to find a creepy message on the wall written in blood, her father stabbed under the bed, and now her best friend is a maniac. Why would Dracula let that happen? What's the point? One by one, the other vampire ladies start appearing, all of them jealous that Mary is the one Dracula truly wants. Dracula finally appears, and he appears together with thunder and lightning and an ominous stare. And he starts chasing Mary with his arms all stretched, running awkwardly towards her. And this is ridiculous. 2 out of the 3 vampire ladies he has, he approached them acting super sensual and powerful, using his intense glare to put them down on their knees for him. He even did the tango with the friend floating around the room. But the one woman that truly matters? Let me chase her down a corridor. Mary obviously runs out of the house in pure horror, and Simon arrives to save the day just in time. And we get a horrible CGI wolf that turns into a bunch of bats. In a typical horror movie fashion, we get a scene where Simon and Mary are doing some research to defeat Dracula. Old Van Helsing spent 100 years trying to find how to kill it, but these two will probably discover it in the next couple of hours. Dracula, being Dracula, enters the library very dramatically with mist and everything. Mary leaves the place running, and Simon and Dracula have a very stupid fight where Dracula slaps Simon, but then Simon throws some Bible sheets on Dracula, and then Dracula disappears. And of course, Mary had to run through a cemetery, and eventually Dracula takes her. And you know where he took her? To a rooftop. And I hate it because he speaks like whispering, and I am getting Phantom of the Opera vibes from it. He finally beats Mary in order to show her how his last day before being killed was like. And it's some weird erotic fantasy that involves leaking blood, and it turns out that Dracula was Judas. And Mary is there wearing a silky red dress for no reason. I'm going to get religious just for a second, so bear with me. Basically, Judas unalived himself because he couldn't handle the guilt of betraying Jesus. But in this movie, Judas, or Dracula, is angry at Jesus for what Jesus did to him. How does that work? Judas betrayed Jesus, not the other way around. What did Jesus did to Judas? I have no idea. So the thing is, Judas, or Dracula, is angry at God for what he did to him. So he came back to Earth as a vampire to turn other people into vampires so they can have all the pleasure that God denies them. But I am so confused because what does Judas has to do with God denying pleasure to people? Maybe if Dracula had said something like sinning or something more generic, then I would understand. But he doesn't. So basically, Dracula's whole motive in this movie is to make people very horny to piss off God. I knew Mary being named Mary had a religious connotation since the start. But now knowing this, it's like Dracula is metaphorically trying to fuck Jesus' mom, and this has taken a weird turn. The 2 vampire ladies present Simon to Mary. She is now a vampire, and his first victim will be Simon. For a moment, you truly believe Mary is now evil, but of course not. She tricks them and stabs Dracula right on the stomach. Dracula and Mary begin to fight, but they are just jumping and spinning in the air, and in a very, I guess, poetic manner, Dracula dies hung up, on fire, with Jesus looking down on him from the cross. The movie ends up in a narration of how she is now Mary Van Helsing, the new keeper of Dracula. Very superhero-esque. This movie has 2 direct-to-DVD sequels, so they really tried doing something out of Mary Van Helsing, the vampire who slays other vampires. And that's the movie. I think that this is a movie that suffers from several tones in one place. They were trying to land all of these jokes with Marcus, but I think that those funny moments crashed with the tension of the movie instead of helping the movie release tension. It's very random, and it just happens like a couple of times at like the start of the movie, and then we don't see it again. This movie is classified as a gothic horror film, but I don't really see the horror in it. Like, I never felt the thrill or I felt scared. I think that it was just more of an action movie. And as for the gothic tag this movie has, I am just guessing that it's gothic just because Dracula is there. Because I don't know what's gothic about New Orleans on spring break. But then again, having Dracula dressed in all black, wanting to make people sin a lot, doesn't count as gothic. And no, mist following Dracula all around doesn't count as gothic either. The truth is, that Dracula 2000 is a very horny action movie. And lastly, I think that this movie lacks personality, which is crazy to say because Wes Craven was involved in the project. The grunge characters of the 90s were turned into the goth characters, and they were usually found in horror/slasher movies. Something that also happened in the 2000s is that horror movies turned very action-based. Something that also happened in the 2000s and is very easy to see in this movie is that 2000s horror movies were very action-based. We were coming from the slasher fever from the 80s and 90s, so obviously all of these movie producers were thinking about how are we going to take all of this adrenaline of slashers to the next level. But sadly, they kind of stepped away from the horror and the mystery and the thrill, and they became more action-based. Also, around this time, we saw for the very first time The Matrix. You know, The Matrix used very complicated action choreographies and all of these visual effects, and we can see The Matrix influence in this movie from the horrible fight between Mary and Dracula at the end, and the way everyone was dressed and the music that was used. And I don't know why a Dracula movie is trying to take elements from The Matrix and call itself a horror movie. Then it's not a horror movie. It's an action movie with some horror elements, which is very different. So yeah, this movie just tried to imitate everything that was popular back in the 2000s. This movie is a lot of movies in one, and it ended up being a hot mess. And that was the review for this time around. I really hope that you enjoyed, and if you did, please give it a like, maybe consider subscribe, and remember to follow me on my other socials. I'm basically literally everywhere. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope that I can see you on the next one. Bye!